Wait.
It's okay.
Wait.
Yeah, it's fine.
I don't like to be too late. I'm already late.
Well, we're live.
We're live. Wow.
Wow.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. In the second episode of Mining for Vervaeke podcast. Today we are discussing agent and arena. And John and his co-authors coined this term, and he talks a lot about it. It was brought up, for example, in episode 7 of the Awakening from the Meaning Crisis series, and he talks about it with Rebel Wisdom as well. Great interview. I will provide the links below. Yeah, I prepared a little intro and about it, just some theory we will discuss. And I would like Gilad to read it.
Yeah, sure. So a term Vervaeke and his co-authors coined. An arena is a place that's organized such that you know how you can act in it. It makes sense to you, i.e., you can conform to that place very powerfully. To be an agent is to be capable of pursuing your goals, to be able to organize your cognition and your behavior so that they fit the situation and environment, so that the agent and arena are coupled. Aristotle is telling you, 1, how to become an agent, and 2, how the world is organized, or the cosmos, so you can meaningfully behave within it. Agent and arena operate under co-identification. The meaning of the one dictates the meaning of the other. You assume an identity and then you assign an identity to things around you. This is what's known as an existential mode. This process by which you are co-identifying both agency and the arena so that they fit together, so you get a coherent and functioning worldview.
Thank you so much. So I'm again welcoming you in the Mining for Vervaeke live discussions, and my guests are members of the Discord community, Awakening from the Meaning Crisis. I will provide the link to join below. And in the room we have Valeria, Kevin, Arjuna, and Gilad. So welcome, guys. I would like to have like 2-3 minutes for each of you to kind of say how do you personally understand those terms, and we will address that. And Valeria, can you go first?
I mean, yeah. So I think that the thing that calls my attention the most is the co-identification thing. So it's like, what is the world that I see, how is the world the way that I see it? And how do I place myself in it? So for example, one thing that I was thinking about is that some people that see the world as completely deterministic and everything has only one way of seeing what does that make me as an agent? Or I was also thinking about situations in which if I see the world as a place of mistrust, what is my agency in it? If I see the world as a place of love and possibilities, what kind of agency do I have in it? So those were the directions in which my imagination was going as I was thinking about it as we read it.
We pass the microphone to Alfred now.
For me, the agent arena thing that most resonated was the idea of something that is the ways in which you get very fit to the environment. And one of the videos, John was talking about this sort of a multi-aspectual thing where you can imagine you're adapted to the physical world, and that's being adapted to the environment. You could also imagine being adapted in different ways to that. And camouflage was one of the ways that occurred to me when I was looking at this toad. And like what had to happen, what are the ways in which that toad is integrated into its environment? And there's a lot of different ways, actually. It's not just the camouflage, just the way it behaves, where it just stays still and doesn't blink, is part of its behavioral adaptation to its arena. And so that's one conception of it, but then it also applies, especially in human cases, to our social adaptation to one another. And so to me, it's like the same concept extended into the human space, conceptual space.
So much. Gilad?
So the thing that comes up to me in relation with agent and arena is you don't really have a separate way just to ask, what is the world and what am I? What can I do and what is the world is like are really intertwined questions. And John gives a few striking examples of the sort of things that happen in this process. One of the most striking examples for me is what happens with absurdity, a sense of absurdity. And he gives the description of if your view of what you are as an agent and what the world is as an arena just don't match. And his example is like if you put a tennis player in a football court, and what is that tennis player doing? It's like nothing of the skills, nothing of his, like his costume doesn't fit anyone else's. His little racket is not going to help against the men running at him. Like you can really imagine how ridiculous, how absurd that situation is. And like it's going to be funny to look at, you know, I don't know, some tennis player running from 10 very large men chasing them, but the deeper thing is like how that is, that would have been lived for that individual, and how so much of our experience when we are in culture shock or in a sense of nihilism kind of resonates with that image.
Oh, wow. Thank you. And Kevin, you got the last word.
Hope it's not last word, but I think to build on this notion, because I was trying to think of an example, right? Because I think that helps with a lot of these Vervaeke terms, which I guess this one I think he co-developed with Christopher Massapietro. But so I was trying to think, right? I think the example Gilad gave about the tennis player, right, in the football arena is one thing, but there's also, and this kind of ties to the multi-aspectual thing that Matthew was pointing to, where like, so like, you know, so for me to go to a bar, right, like I have to have a certain sense of like how, like, so I am a kind of agent in that, so a place where they serve alcohol, right, and I have to, you know, like I have to be, you know, in a certain relationship to that arena. And so I might walk in the bar having this kind of agent arena relationship of like, here I am a patron of this bar, right? But then what if there's like an open mic night, right? So then it's like, oh, well, maybe I know how to sing, or maybe I happen to have an instrument I can play. So then I might shift into, right, a different kind of agent arena relationship. So I think, you know, and also it's like, so there's different aspects that I think can kind of be constantly shifting across the environment. And I also have this kind of agency of being a person who can walk. This goes to the thing that like Matthew's pointing to about like, you know, the physics of my planet allow gravity to be a thing such that I can, you know, be a, you know, biped or a, you know, two-footed thing able to walk on the surface. Right. I have a kind of opposable thumbs from evolution to be able to grab the bottle or to be able to grab the microphone. And also I have, right, I have this agency of the language that I need to know to communicate with the bartender, with the guy who's hosting the open mic. There's all these things I'm kind of like constantly shifting between, and maybe like, it's funny because maybe I'm like way too drunk to be able to sing, and so I'm gonna, just like the tennis player and the in the football arena, it's like I might try to assume the agency arena relationship of like karaoke singer or something, right? But that might go really poorly if I'm not like kind of appropriately proportioned or relating to the environment, right? And same thing, if I have an instrument, I'm trying to play a song, but I really don't know that song, then it's like that's going to be a situation in which the arena is not being receptive to my attempt to engage with it in a certain way. So hopefully that was helpful, and I think I'll just stop with that.
I wanted to ask you guys if you have comments about each other's perception of agent and arena. So I would say 5 to 6 minutes free chat.
What's your conception of agent and arena?
So I kind of have this Shakespearean thing. The world is a theater and we are all actors in it. And so an arena is the current play that takes place. So the play is, let's say, talking about this particular agent. My play takes place in Warsaw. My arena is Warsaw, but also my arena includes the scenery of the place, which would be who are the people in my life, what are my circumstances, even what are my options, everything I can navigate, let's say. And the agency that I have to navigate, the commitment, that my conformity to that place. And as an agent, I can freely act in that familiar to me arena, let's say. Yeah, so that's my understanding. If it makes any sense.
Sure.
I wanted to make a comment on the absurdity that Gilad was talking about. It reminded me of that movie. I don't know if you've seen Everywhere, Anywhere, All at Once, which is full of.
I love that movie. Absolutely amazing. That's like, yeah. I have seen it with a friend and we watched it in 6 consecutive parts, discussing each part because it's so intense. It's everything, everywhere, all at once. And googly eye. So that Valeria knows I've seen it.
Yeah, they have this parallel universe that are absurd, and they have one universe where people have hot dog instead of fingers, hot dog sausages instead of fingers. And it looks ridiculous, and you look at it and it's like, that doesn't make any sense. And then there is this couple that has hot dog fingers. And one thing that I remember is that there was a point in the movie where the relationship between the couple became so relatable that I forgot the hot dog fingers, and the thing started to make sense. So this coming back from the absurdity is as if the arena had shifted from a place where things do not make sense to, oh, but they are still human. They're just, they have this humanness of relating as a couple that it was, and now that is an arena that I can make sense of. It's a relationship. It's 2 people. They love each other and they are fighting, and I know how that goes.
It's interesting. So the presence of the hot dogs, I haven't seen this, but the presence of the hot dog fingers is such a strong absurdity signal that like you don't know what to expect. You don't know what to make of this show. You're just like, this could be crazy. But then as you got into it, you were like, all the other familiar parts came in, and then you your concept of what is absurd must have sort of shifted. I mean, it was no
Felt as
longer
if-
your attention anyway.
As if I had some agency to understanding the hot dog universe now.
I have some kind of clarifications maybe, or things that I'm wondering about. So from my understanding, like there's the agent in the arena is like, what am I like? What can I do, and what must the world be like? And you have this developing relationship where you're trying to see what you can be by seeing what the world can be, and seeing what the world can be by seeing what you can be. And I was wondering, when you were talking about it, Kara, like you were saying, your play is in Warsaw and there's the scenery and everything, but like there's a question of how much is really Warsaw your arena, right? Can you really not imagine yourself and your agency without Warsaw? Like that's what I think, like is more than just like who you are and where you are, which are kind of trivial. Like the agent and arena are somewhat deeper. Like they go into what are those things that you can't be who you are when the world is not that way. It's so I think your example, Valeria, is really apt in sense that if my loved one is suddenly an answering machine, then I can't be the kind of person, like the thing that would make my identity as a partner has been undermined. I cannot be that thing if she's now an answering machine. But I can be that maybe with hot dog fingers, right? Like there's something about it where, like the hot dog fingers, like they don't undermine that really core thing that is necessary for that relationship, that codependent relationship, or co-identified relationship, I should say, to form.
You're talking about that example that John gives when Tom calls Sarah and he declares himself and finds out that it was the washer, the answering machine.
It came to mind, but I was thinking like if literally turns out I was schizophrenic and I don't know, or magic happened in the universe, and now turns out that it's not a person, it's an answering machine. Literally has not, and how can I assume my identity as a partner in that world? Like the world is something else, so I cannot be the thing that I want it to be. That's the sort of, but yeah, that's also a good example.
Do we have any examples from our universe, as opposed to a universe where people are answering machines or have hot dog fingers?
So one that actually came to mind is so I guess a friend of a friend, he strongly identified with the kind of person who could play football, or I guess gridiron football in the States. But then he lost his leg. And so like by losing his leg, he was no longer able to be the kind of agent, right? Or have that access to that kind of arena. In the same way, right, this is like maybe a less kind of significant example. If I lose my thumbs, well, I guess maybe I might be able to still grasp the stuff, right? If I lose my hands, I can no longer be the kind of person, that maybe like programs maybe with my hand, right? Or like, writes computer code or something, or plays video games, or does whatever I need to be doing with my hands. So I think that's one way in which the agent arena can be undermined, is like literally just things that happen that change your capacity to engage with the environment. And Gilad, it feels like the kind of other kind of example where it's not necessarily that you're like something happens to you to limit your agency. It's more like you recognize something about the world that you misperceived, right? Like I was wrong about this person. This person is actually not a person. They are in fact an AI chatbot that, you know, I fell in love with over the internet, right? That maybe that's actually more relatable as like a realistic thing. Yeah, I don't know. So I'll stop there for now.
I like places where the co-identification can change and then the arena changes. For example, sports classes in school or classes in general in the university. You can assume many different identities in relation to those things. And then the arena is different. Like I hated sports class, but I can imagine starting to like it. And that's a place where people are going to make me do things that I don't want to do. And that's a place where I can have fun and learn to learn sports. Or in the university class, it's like somewhere where I'm forced to learn things that I don't care about, or an opportunity to expand my universe and be exposed to things that I would not pursue in purpose. It's the same situation, but the agent arena can change, and that gives you more agency. Or I can imagine situations where you will have less agency.
I like that example because I also have traumatic memories from gym class for different reasons. And I would push back a little bit to say, like, the agent there may be able to kind of reconceive that and say, like, you know, oh, it's not an oppressive situation. It could be fun. But then the arena, in this case, like the gym class, might push back. Like you get in there and they're like, okay, yeah, no, we're doing push-ups today. And you're like, really? That doesn't seem like fun. So I don't know, I don't know, this co-identification word I struggle with. It works in the case of two sentients, and it feels less like it works if, you know, you're talking about some sort of agency or interaction or interdependency between something that's not sentient.
But there were people that had fun with it.
Oh, I know. I was there. I had fun with it too sometimes.
I mean, if you want, you were talking about, like, let's give examples from the real world. And
Yeah.
I think some things are sort of very trivial in a way that when you're, let's say, studying something, you're going, I mean, I can say from my experience, you're going to university, and then, like, who are you comes to question in terms of, like, what position are you going to have in this situation? And a lot of times you would go in and think, like, I'm going to be an excellent student, or, you know, I'm going to be to have wild parties or something. Like there's something that you come in with into that arena, and you're going to find out what that thing is and what you are, and that's going to be negotiated, and it's likely not going to be that pleasant, because my own experience, it has been a lot of changes in how I perceive myself, because the world is not as I thought it is, and I'm not as I thought I am, and those are really dependent on each other, and they're dependent in really complex ways, because it's not necessarily, oh, I thought things would be easier, right? And then I'm not as good as I thought, and, like, that's some mild correction. It's like a lot of things are operating really differently, and people care about things that I did not consider would be that important. And a lot of that kind of really undermines very deep things about not just, well, academics is different. Like, no, the world is different, and I'm different, and what I am in the world is different.
So can you ground that example? Is that like someone who goes maybe to college, like, I want to be, you know, a really great party thrower, and like they try to do the, you know, logistics for the party, and like, holy shit, this is actually way harder than I thought it was. This is like, you know, the people aren't responding the way I want it to. This is the wrong kind of music, like that kind of stuff, and then they get this kind of like kind of I mean, like a personal example, I think you're pointing to is I was like a music major for like the first year or two in college. Everything like, yeah, I want to do this. It's like, oh, I want to do music performance. And then I got experience in what that was like. And I was like, oh, I don't want to do this. This is not what I thought it was. This is like, this is way too stressful. I'm playing music that I don't really care that much about. It's more, about, playing a certain style of music and a certain set list that I'm just really not into. And I was like, man, I can't do this. I cannot make this be the thing.
Did you feel like that was undermining your sense of who you are?
It's hard to say. I would say that I mean, I guess in some sense it undermined my sense of like, because maybe who I was up until that point was someone who's going to do music for a living. But then after that, I was like, okay, I guess that's not me, right? I guess like that arena is not what I thought it was. I really don't enjoy participating in that relationship. So in some sense it undermined like one agent arena relationship, but then it opened up another one of saying, well, I guess there's a lot of stuff that's out there. Let me go explore and take a bunch of classes and see which ones seem more interesting or meaningful. Yeah. So and then for like did philosophy for a year. I was like, man, I'm procrastinating too much on these papers, and it's gonna be a lot of paper writing for this. So it's just that kind of iterative process of saying like, okay, this isn't quite fit. There's certain aspects to this that I don't enjoy as much, and then whereas like the time I spent tutoring like mathematics was intrinsically meaningful, and so that was like a better fit. I was like, okay, I really enjoy this. Let me shift more in this direction. So it's much more like an exploratory process, and which is, I think that's a core point I want to like highlight about the agent arena thing. I think there's a constant like shifting, and because there's just constant aspects of like, okay, now I'm in the agent arena relationship of being a conversational partner, right, on a Zoom call, right, about this topic. But in a minute I might have the agent arena relationship of being someone who's petting a dog, right, or talking to my dad, right, or visiting family for the holidays, like all these other relationships just start kind of shifting from one to another. And it's like this constant, like what you're saying with Kara and like the Warsaw thing. It's like, well, but then she might shift into the mother-daughter relationship, right, or or whatever it is. So I think there's this constant like evolution, but like not just evolution as you become more fit, but evolution in the sense of like you're constantly shifting across the different like contexts into which one is like kind of the best one for right now. In the same way I was mentioning the bar and thing where it's like I walk in there, my initial relationship is I'm a patron who's going to drink some alcohol, maybe play some pool or something, but then all of a sudden I learn it's open mic night. So then that maybe shifts into like, well, I want to be a person who is a kind of impromptu performer, and maybe that's appropriate, maybe it's not, maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. But I think that's an important aspect. It's like this constant kind of jumping when it seems contextually appropriate. Yeah.
Just one thing, and I'll let Kara, I see you want to also add something. The thing I'm trying to point to is like, where is this term indispensable? Because I don't think if we're trying to explain this to people, then okay, let's talk about all these things like petting a dog and just insert agent arena. It would just be cumbersome, right? Because I think it's useful where like it's insightful and it gives us a way to talk about things that were really difficult to talk about before, and now it opens them up. And that's what I was trying to kind of point to when I was asking, like, did it undermine your identity? Because like we can technically define a lot of things as agent and arena, but the place where it's most useful is where it points a light to something that we usually don't pay attention to.
I would say on that point, the pointing at the fact that there is an agent and an arena, and then the relationship between it, and the agent having a concept of what their agencies are in the world, what they can do in that arena as they perceive it. And I don't know how much John got into that part, but every agent in this conception with an agent and arena is conceiving what they think the arena is, and then there are mismatches there. Like they will do something or not do something because they perceive that their role or who they are in relationship to the other people in the room or whatever there's a lot of stuff that goes into the way you conceive of it, and we should be careful here not to mistake, because not to put it too much in the physical space, because it's not like a person and another person and we're both in the same physical arena if we're in the same room. Like we conceive of that, like if you're the leader in a group and you're not, your arena in that room is very different. So it's not just this physical space that you're in. So to me, it has provided a little bit of framework just to think in terms of this agent and arena concept, and to see where that would map into things, to know that different people have and conceive of their arenas differently. And we provide arena to the other people. I mean, that's, so to me, it wasn't like a big reveal. Oh, here's a single term that, oh, there was a concept and I didn't have a word for it. And John may be pointing to something that I'm not quite getting
I think
there.
he is.
Well,
I think
he
pointing
certainly-
to something super deep. Good, sorry, Gilad.
I'll just
Good
say,
morning.
he certainly treats what you're saying when he's talking about reciprocal narrowing and reciprocal opening, right? Those are exactly the states where, you know, our perception of who we are and what the world is are either contracting or expanding, and those are processes like that. That's where I think those terms really shine a really important light, and its relation to addiction too. But go ahead, Valeria. I just wanted to make that point.
No, I just, sorry, I wanted to, I think that he is pointing to something that is, as Gilad said, not something that we would use, that because the co-identification, the assigning of the identities to the world and the assigning of the identities to the self happen mostly outside of consciousness, outside of what we are aware of. So it appears to us as this is what the world is, and this is who I am, and this is what I should be. But at the depths of it, your relevance realization machinery is doing a lot of the work in the world that you see as that is the world that is. There is a lot that your relevance realization is doing in the background in presenting that world to you as it is. So that's why I said that the arena is not something that it's out there and I step into the arena and learn to be an agent in that arena, that it's already there, independent of me. The arena has me as an agent, and the arena are co-created in some way. That is happens outside of me creating who I am and creating how the world is. There is this process happening there. Sorry, Karen.
I wanted to add to this, Valeria, the co-creation of arena, but also merge it with Algernon's earlier point about it's same arena, and you are the same. And it's like some people in the same arena are one in social hierarchy, but the other people are leaders, let's say. And why is that? And if the arena is kind of the same, but it's not, because you sometimes being treated by others as a leader. And what comes to mind is a movie called 50 Jump Street. I don't know if you guys seen it. So the idea, like two secret agents go into a high school to uncover the sale of drugs. And they're guys who like maybe 5-6 years ago finished high school. And then they re-enter high school with the 6 years of experience on top of that. And so the guy who used to be back in the day, huge figure that everybody looked up to, sort of being seen as a bully and a loser. And the guy who used to be seen as a complete loser becomes a leader in the group because he has high tolerance, sensitivity, and extremely, extremely creative and relatable. So the arena changed somehow. It's still school, but the way the guys were being perceived, and the guys did not change much who they are. Like the guy who used to be the sensitive type back in the day, but because the school did not perceive this well, 6 years later, suddenly he was perceived as a leader. And
So I think
yeah.
I think you're touching on an important point, but I think there's some confusion of terms, and
Oh.
that's like, since that's what we're trying to mine, like the thing is, when we're talking about agent and arena, the saying like the school is an arena and that it's like mostly the same is exactly, I think, misusing the term, in the sense that the arena is that complex web of all of the social and physical things that any one of them can do.
But that's my point, actually. That's exactly my point.
Yeah, I'm saying I agree with you, but
Hmm.
I'm saying like the use of the term was like, I would say the same thing as you.
I would say it's not the same arena. That's what I'm trying to say. Even though it's still the same, yeah, same physical place, the arena, it's not the same arena, because the other social elements changed. What changed is like whatever is popular currently, fashionable right now, this changed. So this completely changed the arena, even though the physical place was the same. That was the point I was trying to make, Gilad.
Exactly. And that's why I said I agree with you. And it's just like both the agents and the arena changed. Like, you cannot be the same agent.
Oh, I
Twice.
get it. Yes, because the arena changed, because the arena and the agent, they're coherent entwined. And just by the sheer analogy that there is a different arena, the agent is already changed. I get it. Yeah. So, and another thing I wanted to touch on is the movie Valeria mentioned, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. It's actually a perfect analogy for today's discussion. So it has different arenas, multiverse of arenas, and multiverse of agent acting within those arenas. They are like, it's the same family couple, husband, wife, father-in-law, father, let's say, and also a child, a daughter. And they go through all the multiverses, but they're all different because the arenas are different and they're different agents. And what happens in the TV show, that the agents, they are able to shift in between arenas, but the action takes place in just like one or two arenas, let's say, but the amount of agents from different arenas just like keep circling. And this is why the movie is very complex. We have a commenter in the room. By the way, we have a huge turnout. Hi, Dust, hi, Upcycle Club. And we also have Peter, the introvert, in the comments. To Valeria's movie, Everything, Everywhere, All at Once. Multi-agent systems exist in a diverse array of arenas. Some agents have higher levels of access, some lower. Some agents resemble those found in Plato's allegory of the cave. Ants are agents too. And in addition, in the ant, as an agent example, the ant colony would then be the agency. The arena is the overall environment, and that is multi-layered. Yeah, guys, what do you think about that? Valeria.
I have to read it again, so I'll pass. Next.
I think I can respond. So I think it also goes to what you were saying, and maybe this is me misunderstanding it, but my understanding is like it's important to make a stronger distinction between physical environment or even general environment to arena, because we might be equivocating here. And I think, like Upcycle Club is saying, definitely there can be a lot of agents within the same physical space, and they are shaping each other's capacities or affordances. Like they're shaping what the world can be and what agency each can have, and some have more agency and less. I'm just not sure if like I'm a bit concerned that if we use agent and arena in this manner, like saying in a way that a lot of agents are in the same arena, for instance, then we're missing the usefulness of the term, like in the sense that I think the core thing that it's pointing to, or at least the most insightful thing for me that it's pointing to, is how intertwined they are, how you are not you and then you encounter the world. You are being shaped by the world and you are shaping the world, and that activity defines both of those things, like how you are and how you see the world, and also how you see yourself. So
Galad, would you want to make like maybe like a modification of the ant example where it's like, yes, they're all sharing the same environment, but each ant technically, right, has its own arena. And also maybe at the scale of ants, there's not a high enough level of affordances for the agent arena relationship to be like a meaningfully useful concept, right? That you don't. Yeah, okay.
I think at least from I might be mixing this up. I read some studies about ants, but from what I understand, there are certain ants that would literally have their roles defined by the population of the ants around them. Like if there are enough workers or enough gatherers or something like that, an ant would be a different thing in that environment in a way. So like
Same with humans.
Yeah. So I think it's and I agree with what Upcycle Club is saying, that in a way you can also zoom out and say, well, the colony has agency, right? You can look at the colony and what is defining itself as an agent and what is defining its environment as its own arena. So all of those things sort of come together.
It just seems it's a bit more complicated than you'd want it to be because of the crossover to the physical, between the physical and conceptual spaces, because there are overlaps too. And I could give an overlap example, but I think it would just make it more complicated. Like I'll just say, like, dogs have, their arena is a lot of smell, but they also have some conceptual arena, apparently. Like the idea of them belonging to a pack and there being a hierarchy, like who eats first. That's there in dogs, most species of dogs. And so they have this pack order mentality, like that's part of the arena of being a dog, apparently. Put them with dogs, it's not trained, it's somehow in the hardware. So there is a physical overlap, but that dog has a concept of how it interacts with the other group, like what would be an appropriate amount of play, how hard you can bite, all those kinds of, who goes first, who leads. There's a lot of stuff that's built in to that conceptual arena of that dog or each dog. And so, not to get too mired in the physical, but for humans, we spend an awful lot of time in conceptual space, like almost all of it. And so primarily John was pointing at that and the fact that, you know, both the agent is malleable in its own conception of itself, and largely what it's melding into is its conception of the arena.
I think
Did that clarify it?
I think one more thing that goes with that is, at least for me, it's striking, is just the fact that what is the environment is not answerable without talking about what's relevant. but there's just too much
Overloaded.
stuff. Like there's
Yeah.
10 to the 23 atoms is not really your environment in the sense that it's not integrated enough. It's that you don't act to the individual atoms in most cases.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do atoms though. I would say receptors, like photoreception in your eyes, or frequencies that your ear can take, or receptors in your skin. That's your access to the environment, but that's like way too much. So it has to be integrated in something that affords you agency. And how you integrate that is a whole universe in itself.
Well, maybe it's also because this is interesting, because I think because I feel like the thing that Gilad mentioned earlier about this, like, we know if we use like the agent arena, like concept or notion in this, like super tied to the physical environment way, which might be technically true, it's like, it sounds like Gilad was saying that's not really helpful, and that's not kind of maybe why, so then this is a question I'm kind of asking openly, like, what do y'all think the value of the notion is? Like, what is it supposed to be doing for us, right? Like, other than just like, oh, it's a cool way to look at the world, like, what does it do? Yeah.
I was going to say that it makes you look at, if you're trying to view the world through this lens of agent and arena, what is your arena? What parts of it can you change? Might it not be, and how are you conceiving of yourself as an agent? And what part of other people's arena are you providing or preventing by the way that you act in response to them? So you can use it in a conversation, and once people are talking about it, you can point at a lot of things. So in that way, it's useful, I think. But I'm still not 100% sure that what I'm talking about is exactly what John put forth, but we're just kind of mining it. So let's.
Mine.
But that's the whole point of the conversation, right? For us to try to put our understandings together and see if worst case scenario, we understand that we have different understandings, and that's already helpful. I'd say.
It
So anyone
feels like it
else, like-
falls short of like bringing it into crystal clarity. Ideally, you're just like, it's this, oh, right. And this concept to me, like I have a lot of conceptions about it, but it's not super clear and sharp.
So to me, it was mainly about hearing that and thinking, okay, first of all, it's compelling and there's good evidence for it. Like John was saying, it's very plausible. And then when I look at, for instance, I had a period where I had a crisis in my studies, and at that time, like it was, I would listen to music and I couldn't tell, like, is it good music? And that was the first time that happened. And one of the things that looking back and looking through the lens of this term that this kind of opens up is like, well, actually, the thing that sort of happened in a different place was very strongly related to my identity and to how I see myself as being in the world, and who I am as an agent, what my, I don't want to say my role is, but what things are available to me in general had a much deeper, like it had an effect on that, and that had a much wider effect in my life, is what I'm trying to say, rather than just changing my perception of that arena. It changed my perception of me. And
And that helped resolve the crisis. Is that what you're saying? Or
it helps now in hindsight to understand why that crisis had an effect on things that were not trivially related to it.
It seems like it's shaping, both the agent and the agent self-conception, but the arena that you're carrying with you. Like all your future arenas have been altered in a sense, or your concept of what you can or can't do you can have events in your life that open up. You might say, oh, I am the kind of person that can do that.
Yeah, I think that's reciprocal narrowing or reciprocal opening, right? That's exactly that sense of like I guess it's even a stronger point, right? Because it's not just shaping who you are, but as you are less, the world that you see available to you becomes less as well. And
Do you
I
think
think
it's fair? Oh, sorry. Do you think it's fair to say that if somebody got depressed and like that their I don't want to just use the word agency, their arena shrinks
Oh yeah.
temporarily? Like you'd say like, you want to go out and do whatever. And they're just like, no, like that is not even an available option to me.
absolutely.
That kind of thing. And so it seems like it's malleable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The co-identification is what is for me the most useful thing in that term. Noticing that the world that I see, it's not the only possibility for me seeing the world.
Oh.
And how I see myself and how I see the world are always connected to each other. I have to think of my husband coming home one day and saying that since he started meditating, his work colleagues became much nicer. It's that magical.
Perception of reality, like the perception filters are different as well somehow.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I'll turn on.
I was going to share an experience that I had once where it was like a weekend seminar kind of a thing. And there's lots of positive thoughts, although I think it was a cult in the end. But it was some good training. One of the things that we had done, we did some exercises all day where we made a lot of eye contact. And so they were talking to us a lot about eye contact and smiling. And then we had a break and we went off like during lunch. We went to some fast food place that was across the street from this hotel. And I'm like, everyone is smiling at me. Like I told the other person, I'm looking at everyone is smiling at me. What's going on? And it was because like I was making eye contact without even realizing it with all these people and smiling. And they were like, oh, look, a smiley person. Anyway, that kind of thing, like there was a shift in my perception of my own arena. Like I'm not the kind of person that random people smile at. And yet, so it struck me as like this big contrast at that time because of that.
Well, and to clarify, like what happened is that you went with this group of people who were doing the smiling eye contact. And once you went to the restaurant, you just noticed the people who were working at the restaurant were doing that back to you?
Customers.
Okay,
what was happening
yeah.
was when you make sort of meaningful eye contact with someone else, and it's really hard in this environment, but when you do that, it's a signal to the others person that you are open and friendly. And then if you're smiling, then they tend to reflect that and they feel good. And they're like, oh, look, this is like an open, friendly person. No one else is even looking at me. They're all staring at their phones. This person just acknowledged me. We had this whole little eye-to-eye conversation. And, this goes on if you make eye contact with people. So this idea of like, you were in the room, the same room, what was the arena? One person is this open eye contacty person. This other one has this grumpy look on their face. And their arena is very different. And we all read these things from one another. What's that?
You didn't see that. You didn't see the shift in yourself. You saw the shift in the world.
Yeah, that was my first observation was like, why are these people smiling at me? And I didn't realize like how in this co-identification, like I was shifting both my concept of the arena, but also then I was changing what they were seeing of me. And there's always this relationship between people when they're in the same space. So anyway, this idea of arenas definitely goes beyond the physical into conceptual space, at least in humans. And AIs.
And AIs.
Just throw that in there.
I wanted to touch on last part of the agent in the arena discussion, mainly the arena change. So John talked about born on 4th of July case. So the Vietnam soldiers,
Mm.
they were, their arena was the war, the woods, forests, swamps, and they were soldiers. They had to perform special tasks, and they have to keep going and keep doing it. A lot of them got addicted. Not everyone, but a lot of them were so traumatized they were addicted to morphine or some opioids, whatever was available. And as they returned, some of them were able to get off the opioids, lose the addiction.
Almost
Almost all of them, really? Oh, that's great. I thought like half of them or something, but I don't have the exact numbers. Almost all of them, that would be great. That's great. So they were able to, the moment the arena changed, they lost the addiction because they became different agents. So there is definitely a case of co-identification with arena. In US, on US soil, they are US citizens, and there is a completely different role, coming to Shakespeare, role they play in that stage, let's say. So what do you think about that?
I guess we can point at the difference. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I guess we can point at the difference between the physical and the conceptual again, but I'm thinking that, and I don't know this movie that well, like in the case of PTSD, or somebody who's been in sort of very active combat and been exposed to some incredibly intense situations where it's life or death if they pay attention to everyone in the room. And then they come, so 1 week it's like that. So, that they can spot people doing things they shouldn't be doing or preparing to do something, whatever. In a war zone, you have to remain alert. And if you're in a situation where, you weren't and somebody died, now you're hypersensitive to that. And you come back and you're just like, now I've moved back to America. So you bring in a lot of that arena with you. Like, you are not the same person. And you're going to go into whatever space you are. Like, you can go to a restaurant and you might bring back with you, I have to evaluate every single person in this room. Because you've kind of adapted to that prior arena, the physical arena of being in danger, but you're carrying part of that with you.
I think I wanted to say something similar. When you described the environment with swamps and forest, what I was thinking is like the environment was violence and fear, and me as an agent, or the soldier as an agent, was somebody who had to participate in that violence and war. And then when they come home, that is the environment is home and family, and their participation is as like fathers. And the PTSD, I remember Jordan Peterson telling the story that sometimes the PTSD came from the person when they are put into this different environment. It reveals something about them that they did not know about themselves. They see themselves committing acts that they never imagined that they would. And reconciling that is part of the trauma. It reminds me of Gilad telling in the beginning about the world being a lot more complex than I thought that it was. That this, if I am capable of doing those things, what is the world now?
Yeah.
That
Oh,
is
and
a
then who
different
am
kind of-
I too, right? It's like not only like what is the world, but who am I in relationship to it, right? Because like that world's way different, and also I'm way different than I thought it was. Like, I didn't know I could do that, right? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah.
I
Man.
think Gilad mentioned it earlier, like pushing back on it and testing it and saying, like, can I do this? Oh, look, I can do that. Oh, no, can't do that. There seems to be something in that here. And like the limits, not just that they're not entirely self-conceived. There are limits, but your conception of them may not match. And so this probing and testing and changing and shifting occurs.
I think it's really interesting. Exactly those points that were kind of coming along. Everyone, I think, more or less, about what is confined to that specific relationship, and then what is carried out. And I think some of us use, like, we carry the arena with us. I think I saw comments also, and some of us said, well, it changed me. I think like that was my thing. It changed me as an agent, and then that carried out to other contexts. But I think it's interesting in the sense, like, how is that? It's very clear to me how that term acts in a given situation, and I get John's point, like the soldiers coming home, and now they're not addicted because the world can be more and they can be more, and they don't have to narrow their own identity to that very, very small thing of just, making the pain go away and surviving the next day. And then that can expand. But like what Matthew, what you were saying about, like, all of the things that you carry with you, now you can't see the world the same way that you would have before, for better or worse.
So I have a question about, because, and this is maybe like an extension of like this. So imagining like a soldier who comes back from war or Vietnam, let's say specifically, just for the example, and let's say they have PTSD, right? Like, and let's say, like, it's like they're in. So my question is, so let's say, like, they're home having dinner, right? Everything's, normal, average day, like nothing's going on out of normal. And then they hear an engine backfire, right? And that like becomes like a trigger that launches them right into a flashback, right? Which is like kind of, they're kind of reliving that state, and it brings them the memories back, puts like, adrenaline flooding their whole system. So my question is, like, so did they just switch arenas in that moment? Was that cue switching them into a different kind of arena? Or this is my question, like, or is that just one giant arena and they just kind of like, it went into a different part of it? Does my question make sense?
I think it does, but I think my answer might be disappointing, or my answer. Like, I don't know if it's the answer, but I would just say, like, for every term, there's a certain point where you're going, like, maybe I need a different term. And to me, it's, any term can outlive its usefulness. And I don't know, maybe it has changed their arena, or maybe I don't know enough about PTSD to say, like, maybe now their arena is, I'm a person who sometimes gets flashbacks and can't, hold a job where engines might backfire and make me, like, there's a lot of ways to frame that and ask the question, but where is it useful and where is it insightful and profound is how to decide, like, whether to use it or not.
Can I give it a try?
Please. Yeah.
I would say that now the world is such that a loud noise can be a gun firing or danger. Before it wasn't. And now the world is such that, that loud noises can mean danger. And that's what changed. And my agency now is like, in the face of loud noises, protect yourself.
I want to add a positive example, but for the military guy who they may face something in the field where they are terrified, and they come out of it okay on the other side of it. And then their conception of themselves, like in their that they have faced that fear, and they're like, okay, if I face that, that changes the way they perceive a lot of things going forward in their lives. Possibly. Like they can look at something, they can always compare back and say, okay, no, that was scary. This is inconvenient, or something like that, where and so in that case, their agent arena relationship, it changed in the moment because of the physics of the time, but then it changed the way that they interact. So it's not even like a static change in the future. It's like the way that they're going to explore what's possible for them. Like, what are they afraid of? And that's like can project into all sorts of different aspects of their life.
So
That's
are you
a
saying that,
positive one?
like, would that be like they have this new notion? It's like right after doing this like really like terrifying thing, and they're able to do it anyway. Are you saying that somehow their sense of like oh, so now I'm the kind of agent who's able to face this level of fear, this level of stress, and overcome it, and that kind of shifts how they relate to future situations? Is that what you're saying?
Like their relationship to their own fear
Mm.
has shifted. You know, what I can get through my fear, there's that kind of capability. So there can be things that can happen to them in combat that can actually help and shape them in a way that I think this is why you see a lot of powerful leaders come back sometimes, that things like that happen and shapes them.
So before we move to the next question, I wanted to add a little bit to that arena shift. A story, true story happened to my little brother. So he was a brilliant student. He finished the school with flying colors. He got immediately into 3 universities, and he picked one, and he was like the best of the best, respected, loved in the group. And then he finishes the university, and there is no job, like nothing. And he's like, well, but I was the best of the best. And they're like, well, yeah, it's like, but getting employed requires other skills. Just being the best at the task that is in front of you, that's one thing. But like, imagine just being like, let's say, more, I don't know, street smart and getting and actually acquiring a proper job. And so because the rules were clear, the path was clear, here was the task, he has to excel in this thing, and he does. And so he gets absolutely massively depressed because he was expecting a lot of offers of job based on his excellency, and he didn't. Like nobody was actually coming after him. And yeah, if he would go to interviews, they would be like, how about your experience? And he's like, I have no experience, but like, look at my my performance here. And they're like, nah, we don't care. and basically his arena changed. He comes back home, he stays with mom, and he becomes sort of kind of almost turning into a child for several months, to the point where he has difficulty to making crossword puzzles. The depression got so severe. And yeah, slowly he comes out of it. And he had to completely rebuild his arena to become an agent. And that was actually something of this dramatic shift that I have seen happening in the same kind of town at the same time with the same person. And yet, yeah, I wanted to just bring it into the room. What do you guys think?
I have to go, so thanks everyone.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
Gila.
Yeah, I'm glad I could participate and see you around.
See you around, Gila.
Thank you.
Oh, now we have perfect squares.
The arena has closed, yeah, or I guess shrunk.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I remember a time in my life where I was looking at John's definition again. An arena is a place that's organized such that you know how you can act in it. It makes sense to you. You know where the things belong, what actions are appropriate, how to measure and calibrate your performance. And you don't mean just your physical performance, also your intellectual performance. And I was thinking in relation to what you said, Kara, I remember when the world made sense to me such that what I have to do is what the adults expect from me. I have to study hard, I have to get good grades, and I have to just basically, what I have to do was clearly given to me until the time when it was not. And this rebuilding the arena, that's what I was reminded of. Normally, adolescence is when doing what the adults expect from you, it's not enough. And then the world doesn't make sense for a while because a lot of what my peers wanted from me was something that I could not decode immediately. So I had no agency. Sorry.
I'm thinking with your story and this idea of college, like one of the points in your life where your agent, if you go to college, like you develop by the time you're a senior, this is probably in high school too. Like when you get to a senior, you feel like, okay, I've learned I have built an arena here. You've got some friends, you know who you are, you go to the lunchroom, you know how it works. You got a corner, your people are there, their people are there. You know what's happening after lunch, all kinds of things get built. And so by the time you're a senior, you're very comfortable. You to that definition, as you were reading that sounded just like that. Like you really understood who you were in relationship to your entire social setup at high school. And then you go away to college, and maybe you're a smart kid or an athletic kid or whatever, and you go off to some bigger school and you realize, oh, I'm actually not that good an athlete, or I'm not as bright as I thought I was compared to these people. So that your arena, that shift happens when you change so much stuff in your life at one time. And it seems like, going in and out of different schools or institutions where you've tuned to an environment for a while and then the environment changes. You're like, oh, like you still have some of it, but you've got to rebuild and figure out, who are my friends? What am I doing? All of it when you change venues so harshly like that.
So then what would be like, because now I'm trying to bring in, I think, Goliath's general stance of like, okay, so how does the agent relationship concept or term or notion, how does that give me purchase on that problem? Like what, like, is it the fact that, like, so the problem that you're describing, right, that Kara gave an example of, where it's like the situation, let's call it the context or something like that, has changed so dramatically that like the agent relationship is disrupted, right? It's like college is done. I've fitted myself to this, context very well. So the agent relationship is very strong, but now it's disrupted, right? So does having this language, does that afford me the capacity to like do something about it? Like, does it, right? Like, does the question make sense? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it does, because if you understand these concepts and you're in, let's say you're in high school and then you've gotten out of high school and you're struggling in the new environment, and then somebody talks to you about these things and you realize like, oh, that's kind of why I don't feel connected to this place. Like I don't know what the possible things are here. And that maybe you get in a club and you're meeting people and you're connecting to it all, to understand that there is a relationship that you form instantly without even intending to between you and everything else. And you form these arenas. It seems like if you were aware of that, you might have more agency with it, more ability to push against it, to see where maybe you're misconceiving things.
Because you self-consciously like be, instead of kind of doing that on autopilot or automatically, or just like, something's wrong, I don't know what's up. You'd be like, oh, okay, I see what happened. I see that I no longer in university. that now I'm a completely different problem space. I don't know what like is kind of required here. I don't know what it means to be a successful, job applicant versus a successful student. And because I realize I don't know that, then I can start to think, okay, well, what does it take to reestablish that kind of quality of relationship in the agent arena? Am I getting that like somewhere in the ballpark?
Yeah.
Somewhere in the ballpark, yes.
Yeah.
How are we on time, Kara?
Yes, we are good on time. And yet, like the last, maybe I want to finish within 5-10 minutes. But we have one question which kind of stood out to me. And it was, how do you each see your current agency in this arena right now? Yeah, who goes first? Thank you for the question.
I kind of feel like it's interacting with peers. Like we've got an arena set up where we're trying to share across our minds in a space and enhance our understanding of a common vocabulary. That feels to me sort of like the arena. And my conceptualization of it is that it's fairly equal between, like, we're all trying to share, even, and it feels like a piece is missing now. And as an agent, I mean, like, to share my ideas, to go along with the other person's ideas. And I feel like the other people are expressing the same agency in the same space. And I'll put the mic down.
Carl?
It's Carl.
Or Valerie.
Sorry, Kevin.
Okay. Yeah, I guess we could check. So in that moment, just now, my agency just like went like, whoa, I don't know, like what's going on? What do I do? But it's funny, I think I interpret the question differently. Because I thought they were asking like, how, like, I thought the question was more or less, what is your agency like? Do you feel like it's high or low in this moment, right? And my like response was like, oh, it feels like pretty okay. Like it's like I'm not super confused, right? It's like if we were speaking different language, then I'd be like, I don't know what to do here. I don't know how to participate. I feel like I have enough familiarity with the with everyone else involved and with grappling with some of this language that it's kind of pretty fluid. Yeah, and then like maybe another way to interpret the question is like how do I perceive, like what kind of agent do I feel like I am in this moment? And similar to Matthew's answer, like I feel like I'm a participant, a collaborator, I guess, of sorts. And it is funny because I think whenever Glad left, I felt like, oh no, like actually I now have less, space to move in.
Smaller.
It felt like there was like a weird sense in which like I did feel some sense of my agency decreasing, because then I was like, oh, well, fuck, like I don't know what Glad think about this. It's like I don't know because he's not here anymore. So yeah, I guess those are my two answers to hopefully what one of them was what they're asking.
Thank you. And Valeria.
You're on mute.
Thank you. So what I was thinking before was that more than the vocabulary is the thing that the concept is trying to point at, not necessarily only what the hell is John trying to communicate with it, but also the deeper thing of what is it that we normally do not look at, so that we can have to come up with other languages to describe it. So looking at there's a finger pointing at the moon, and I think for me this arena is us trying to do the dialogos as he describes in the after Socrates process, get the multiple perspectives, so that with the multiple perspectives we have the hope of understanding the thing that this agent arena relationship is trying to point at. What is the world like, such that well, John would come up with this concept, and this concept is useful enough that we are here talking about it. What is it that I do not normally see in the world that I can learn to see, and through learning to see, have more agency? So my participation here, my agency is in thinking together and trying to see the world through your perspectives and put my perspective so that you can see the world through my perspective, so that we can see the thing in the middle, so that we can have a better, a more complex, a more refined view on the world and how our agency is, and something like that.
We don't really have time anymore. Thank you for the last question, Carl. And
Wait, Carrie, you didn't answer it. What's your sense? How's your agency? Yes.
My sense, it's depending my level of alertness. So if I am full of coffee, and let's say my agency kind of is larger. I mean, I can just like, yes, I can do this, and then I kind of like, even to the point I can break through reality somehow. Carl asked about what is the largest arena and how do we expand it. Well, I don't know. Everything, yeah, exactly, in the head.
Yeah. It's conceptual, so
Mhm.
I don't know that there's a largest.
What Valeria thinks. I'm curious.
Thinking about this Buddhist concept of everything being interconnected, that is the largest arena. When you're doing metta meditation, and then you expand the metta to everything, like the largest contemplation, that is the largest arena. It's like me in a love relationship, love in the reciprocal mode, in the existential mode of love, of reciprocal open in relation to everything bound together. That for me is the largest arena that affords me the most agency.
I think if that's, I'm pretty sure that's the Carl, I think it is, who asked that question. And so I'm going to give, I think the answer he's maybe, or like he might think, which is, so like, yeah, it's actually an interesting contrast to the meta thing, right? The kind of expanding one's sense of like, you know, what are the things to which I can relate to in a compassionate way, right? And kind of expanding that maximally. You know, another answer to this, I think that Carl's probably more sympathetic to is like the more vipassana, like that space in which, right, the kind of like the nothingness or the oneness or whatever you want to call it, like that space of like the things through which stuff is unfolding, right? That is just kind of always there in the background, and it's there no matter what your mood is, no matter what's kind of present in your awareness. It's just kind of there. So that's another, you know, like, you know, I guess I'm trying to make sense of like why would I call it largest, or at least like this perspective I'm trying to construct. Why would that be the largest? And I guess the argument might be like, well, it's the thing through which everything else happens. So like it is, you know, the frame of frames, I think Carl would probably want to say. And like, and that is the thing, you know, although, you know, then you might get into nitpicky semantic quibbles. Like, is that really an arena? It's like, well, it's the thing that lets all the arenas happen. So let's call that one. Yeah.
It's the turtle at the bottom.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the turtle at the bottom. Yep.
Let's go with prajna, where you have both at this, where you realize that they're both at the same time, the in and the out and the transjective, and it's one thing. That is bigger.
I'm curious in that conception of like the agent and then the arena, which is the largest arena or whatever, the super large connected arena. Where does the agent, like there's more than one agent in that, right? So how does your agent and the other people's, are they part of your arena, or are they agents? Or are there only two things here? Or one, you know what I'm saying? In the conception of the maximal everything, you're just like, all right, it's all connected. And there's no agent, there's no arena, it's all just made up. But then you're like, smaller than that, there's a lot of, if you're telling everyone there's an agent arena relationship, where are all the other agents in your arena?
I think that state is a state where you can be aware of the relationship between the agent and the arena. It's like, yeah, you are in the transjective space, or you are in the non-dual space. You see the relationship. You see the co-identification happening. But
I
then
think
again, we're
you provide, I think we provide it partly for one another. Like we become each other's partly, they're other people's arena. Anyway, and so the concept of like largest gets a little fuzzy there.
On a fuzzy note, I wanted
There you
to present the puzzle that Algernon posed. It's at the background. It's a
Puzzle.
kind of Rorschach thingy. Guys, what do you see? And I actually I'm really curious about Valeria and Kevin because they don't know what it is. What do you see there, guys?
Can
You
you
guys
like
in comments
cover
as
the?
well.
Can you cover the camera or like move so I can see the?
Hold on.
I'm not even sure what I'm.
Yes, hold on.
it's
I
like
have-
that side is an amplification of a detail of that side.
That's just an
Oh.
artifact of Discord. The
Hmm?
image is just the one on the left.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
So that's just like a for fun magnification. I'm not sure what.
so
Like-
I see a fish, and at the very corner there is like a toad or a frog. There's definitely an eye and there are some ripples, and there is something that looks like a fish, and then the crosses. What are the crosses? I don't know what the crosses are.
How about you, Kevin?
It's
This
funny
is
because
fascinating.
I know I didn't really look at much of it, and then once Blair's to say, I was like, oh, I could see that. My first impression, I think I only stared at the thing in the middle, a little like lump thing. I thought that was like, oh, it's a jellyfish. But it's like, okay, well, and saying the same problem arises, like, well, what's all this cross stuff? Like, are those? It's like raindrops. Maybe it's rain. Maybe that's raindrops. But if that's raindrops, then probably not jellyfish. Maybe it is. Maybe it's a jellyfish with rain falling on it, and it's like on a
Jellyfish in the
sofa.
rain.
Like the thing on the kind of bottom left of the jellyfish looking thing or the toad looking thing. Looks like that might be a sofa. So it's a jellyfish on a sofa with rain falling. I
What
mean,
a title.
I mean, come on, man. Like, I don't know what y'all expected an answer to be to that question.
That's
like
an
those
excellent.
remarkable.
It's actually a photograph Algernon took.
Oh no way. Okay.
It's a photograph that's been tweaked.
Oh, really?
So but very little actually. Like the eye that's down in the corner that you're seeing is is somewhat drawn using the environment there. But the thing above that is a tree frog
It is a frog. Okay.
on a piece of
There you go.
birch,
Yeah.
white birch.
Oh, what happened?
It
What's going
was.
on?
I don't know now. There's like a blob attacking it.
It burned.
Oh, it's probably the paper. There might be like a paper on our camera. That's okay.
Oh yeah, some.
So what's frog? Okay.
But anyway, so it's the it's a tree frog and a piece of white birch, and I put them together because there's a lot of things we were talking about tuning to. Well, I was thinking about tuning to the environment and how there is an aspect there that is agent arena, not quite in the sense that John means here, because it's not an interactive relationship, but evolutionarily it is. And one of the things that struck me when I was painting that eye was that this camouflage pattern that is in this frog actually goes from its skin and then through the actual eye, iris, whatever that part is, and then continues in the skin, and it forms a line. And that is what forms the camouflage, because the predators, including us, would look at that, and we've got visual perception systems that look for lines and think that continuity, the contiguous line, makes the edge of an object. All that's built into our hardware. Its camouflage is adapted to hide from predators. Like there may be other predators who are like, yeah, I can see it, I can eat it, no problem. But it's actually adapted to its environment, which is partly its predators. which have a visual system that is subject to this line finding thing. So it's not like the frog knows these things, but there is something really deep there about how integrated that thing is into its environment. It's not just like color match. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, so its agency or agent reinvention, it's much stronger than a jellyfish on a sofa, like for sure, right?
Yeah. Plus, it has a perfect circle back, no pun intended, Valeria, to Valeria's domicide thing. That domicide is like a toad without a shell, which is
Oh, that's from Gilad,
Turtle.
actually.
Don't have shells.
I mean, so the turtle
Yeah.
without a shell
That
is a
makes more
toad.
sense.
Turtle without shell.
Okay, that was
Toad.
mine.
Wait, was it from what
I
language
was
was
like,
it?
I love it so much, but this one doesn't look like.
Which
That's
language
German.
is that?
That's German.
German. So
The Schildkröte. It's a shield is a shield,
A shell?
and Kröte is the toad, and a turtle is a toad with a shield.
A toad
That's
with a
amazing.
shielded toad.
Yeah.
Very direct people, the Germans.
Okay, so you said it's on Twitter, right? Algernon, I can provide the link below afterwards in the
Mhm.
comments. I mean, in the description. I edit it afterwards. Well, guys, it had been absolutely super fun. I thank everybody in the comment section and also for your active participation and donation. And I thank everybody in this room and also Gilad, who has a lovely Saturday today. And yeah, thank you guys so much. Valeria, Kevin, Algernon. Yeah. And see you in the next Mining for Vervaeke